Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. In this video I'm going to show you how to create a console tic-tac-toe game in Java. For this video I'm using Eclipse IDE, but feel free to do it in any Eclipse like NetBeans. The code is pretty much the same. So the game consists of a tic-tac-toe. So if I run the code, as you can see, it runs in the console, and I get this board. And then it asks you to enter the coordinates for the row. I'm enter 0, and then it asks you for the column. I'm enter 0, and as you can see, it makes a play for you, and I continue to print the board with the move, and then it asks you for the next player's move, and it continues the game until one of the players win. And so let's get on with the code. It's actually very simple to do, very straightforward. Tic-tac-toe is one of the first things that you do when you're learning to program in any language. So I'm going to create a new project. So I'm going to click on File, New, and Java Project. And I'm going to call it Tic-tac-toe. And I'm going to click Finish. And next I'm going to right click on the project, and then I'm going to create a class. I'm going to call my class again Tic-tac-toe. I don't need a main method, so I'm not going to check that one, and my class is going to be public. And I'm going to click Finish. And the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a two-dimensional array. So I'm going to say private string, and because it's a two-dimensional array, I need to declare it by using two section of brackets, and then I'm going to call it board, and then I'm going to create two constants. The first one is going to be one for columns, so I'm going to say private static final int, and I'm going to call this one actually rows, and I'm going to set it to 3, and I'm going to create another one, but this one is going to be for columns, and I'm also going to set it to 3. Next I want to create my constructor, so I'm going to say public tic-tac-toe, and I'm going to the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to instantiate my board, so I'm going to say board equals new string, and I'm going to say rows and columns, and I need to add this one here. And the next thing that I want to do, I want to be able to instantiate my board. So when the game first starts, the things that I want to do is to set the board to all empty squares. So I'm going to say public void initialize board, and I need two for loops here. The first one is to loop through the rows, and the second one is to loop through the columns. So I'm going to say int I equals 0, I less than rows, I plus plus. And I'm going to create an embedded for loop. The second one is going to be to take care of the columns, so I'm going to say int j equals 0, j less than columns, and j plus plus. And next I'm going to say board I j equals to, and I'm going to set it to 3 empty spaces, 1, 2, 3, and you'll see why later on. But basically it comes down to formatting the board in a way that is easier to see, and all the boards not too small, and things that are not one on top of the other. So I'm going to create a comment here. It says initialize board, and I need to do next it will be to print the board. So I'm going to say public string. I'm going to return a string here, and I'll say print board, and here I need to loop through the entire content of the two-dimensional array. So I'm going to say string. Actually, what I need to do is to create a string, and I'm going to create the board. I'm going to lay out the board inside a string. So I'm going to say string board, and I'm going to set it initially to empty space, and next I'm going to embedded for loops. And the second one will be in j equals 0, in j less than columns, comma j plus plus. And here, when I'm printing the board, if I'm doing the columns, what I want to be able to do, I want to add the content of the board plus a pipe, and that is that symbol, and that's for the columns. And then when I'm doing the rows, what I want to do, I want to add the division between one row and the next one. So I'm going to say new line, and because I'm doing 3 spaces for every single player, I want to say 1, 2, 3 plus symbol, 1, 2, 3 plus symbol, 1, 2, 3, and new line. And so that is for the print board, and of course I need to return string board, and I'm going to make a comment here, return string board, and printing tic-tac-toe board. And so next we're going to start working on the main loop. So I'm going to create another class, and this one I'm going to call a main, and here I do need a main method, so I'm going to click that one, and I'm going to click finish, and inside my main method I want to create a scanner, and I'm going to call it input, and of course I need to import Okay, so the next thing I want to do, I want to instantiate my tic-tac-toe board. So I'm going to say tic-tac-toe equals game. Actually, that's the name of the object, and then I'm going to say new tic-tac-toe, and next I'm going to create a do while loop. So I'm going to say do while true. It's going to be an infinite loop because we need to repeat this thing until one of the players wins the game. So for now, what I want to be able to do is to test the board, see if my board is printing out correctly. So I'm going to say system.out println, and I'm going to say game print board. And of course I need to initialize the board here, so I want to say game initialize board, and here I'm going to say int player equals input dot next int. And so let's go ahead and run the code, and that's our board. But there is a few things wrong with the board. Notice that we're getting an extra pipe here in the end, and we don't need this row here at the bottom. So let's go ahead back into Tic-Tac-Toe. Let me stop this first. Okay, let's go into Tic-Tac-Toe, and here we can say if, because these are the columns, so we're going to say if j equals columns minus 1, meaning that we reach the last iteration in the loop. Or actually, if it is not, if j is not column minus 1, then we can print this. Else, then just add the value of board to the string, and let's go ahead and run it again, see how it looks now. Okay, so that's better. So now we need to solve this last row here at the bottom, and here is this section. So I'm going to say if I equals columns minus 1, but it's actually not equals columns minus 1, and then we print this. Else we don't need to take any action. So let's go ahead and run it again, and that's our board. So that's that. And the next thing we need to do is to add the logic of the game, meaning that we need to, every time the player plays, we need to add that move, and we also need to check for end of game situation. So I'm going to come here, and I'm going to add a method called public void set play, and this one is going to take 3 variables. It's going to take I, it's going to take y. I is for the row, y is for the column, and it's going to take a string, which is going to be the player that is playing. And so the only thing that we need to do is to add it to the board. But before we do that, we actually need to check if that specific square is not used. So we're going to say if board, this board ij equals, remember we are setting it to 3 empty spaces. So if we have 3 empty spaces here, it means that we can use that square and make a move. But instead of using 3 empty spaces, I'm going to create a regex string. So I'm going to say private string regex, and I'm going to set it to 3 empty spaces. And so here we're going to say if the board equals regex, or the 3 empty spaces, then we can make a move. So we're going to say board I j equals player, and I need to change this, instead of y it's j, And remember, we're using 3 spaces or 3 characters for every single position. So the player, meaning that it's either X or no, is going to occupy one single position. So we need to add space player plus space player. And the next thing we need to do is to add the functionality for checking winners. And I'm going to call this one setting player move. And finally, I'm going to check for winners. So I'm going to say this one is going to return a boolean. So I'm going to say it's game over. And I'm going to return false at the end if nobody won the game. But basically what I'm doing here is checking every single row or in every single column and checking diagonal. So I'm going to pause here and I'm going to add the code, which is basically 4 loops. Okay, so that's it for the Tic-Tac-Toe class. So let's head over back to the main class. And so the first thing is to print the board. So we're done with that. The next thing is to prompt the user to make a move. So I'm going to say system that out print line, and I'm going to say enter coordinates for rows. And here, instead of player, I want to create an end called row. And I'm going to capture that input. And then next, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to copy this. Enter coordinates for column. And I'm going to copy this so I don't have to type. And I'm going to add it to a variable called column. And here I'm going to set the play. So I'm going to say game set play, and I'm going to pass row, comma, column, comma, and the player, which I haven't set yet. So I'm going to come here right after initialize the board. I'm going to create a string, and I'm going to call it player, and I'm going to set it initially to X. And the next step is to check whether or not, after we made that play, whether or not the game is over. So I'm going to say if game is game over, and then we're going to output the user, or output the message to the screen, and we're going to say game print board. If I can type, create a new line, and I will say player wins. And finally here we're going to exit out of the loop. Remember, this is an infinite loop here, and so if we reach this point, we're going to switch players. So I'm going to say if player equal X, and then we say player equals O's, else player equals X. And I think that's it. It is actually very simple. So I'm going to play the game, and so that's my board. Enter coordinates for rows. So I'm going to play on the very first square. So I'm going to enter 0, 0, and I didn't get the output, so I'm going to see what happened. And I made a mistake here in the code. Instead of equals, I'm checking for a regular expression, so instead of equals it needs to be matches. So that's one thing. That's why it's not working. It's not adding the play into the board. So let's try it again. 0 0, and now we got the right play. Let's do 1 1, and as you can see, it's working. And so that's it for this tutorial. I hope that you found it useful, and see you in the next tutorial.